Somewhere in a patch of tall grass half hidden under a fallen leaf, there's a shape that isn't quite right. You haven't consciously noticed it yet, but some part of your brain already has, and it noticed before you finished reading this sentence, before you were even aware there was anything to notice at all. That part of you is older than language, older than fire. Older, possibly, than primates themselves, a survival system that predates almost everything else you consider part of being human. Right now, reading these words, you're using one of the newest skills your species ever developed, something barely 5,000 years old. But buried underneath, it is a detection system so fast, so specialized, that it can spot a coiled shape in dense foliage before your conscious mind even knows to look for one. So what exactly is faster than your ability to read? And why would evolution bother building something like that in the first place? The answer starts with a researcher who spent decades chasing a very specific, very strange question. Why do primates have such unusually good vision compared to almost every other group of mammals? Lynn Isbell, an anthropologist and primatologist at the University of California, Davis, spent years working through that puzzle before landing on an answer that reframed the entire field. Primates, as a group, rely far more heavily on vision than almost any other order of mammals, an oddity that had never been fully explained. In a 2006 paper published in the Journal of Human Evolution and later expanded into her book The Fruit, the Tree, and the Serpent, Isbell proposed what's now called the snake detection theory. Her argument was direct. Snakes, not leopards, not eagles, not rival troops, were the single most persistent predator early primates ever faced, stretching back tens of millions of years, likely as far back as the age when snakes themselves were rapidly diversifying. And that relentless, ancient threat is precisely why your eyes work the way they do. If you want to understand why primates evolved, you have to address why they have such good vision, Isbell has said. According to her research, avoiding a camouflaged, silent predator that could strike from almost anywhere required an entirely different kind of eyesight than most mammals ever needed. Sharper color vision to spot a patterned body against green leaves. Better depth perception to judge exactly how far away that shape really was. Forward-facing eyes built for precision rather than the wide peripheral awareness most prey animals rely on instead. Every one of those traits, Isbell argues, traces back to millions of years spent locked in a silent arms race with something that wanted to kill you from ambush. That's already a remarkable claim. But in 2013, a team of neuroscientists gave Isbell's theory something no amount of behavioral observation ever could. Direct evidence from inside the brain itself. Working with researchers from the University of Toyama in Japan and the University of Brasilia in Brazil, the team, led by Quan Van Le, studied a small, ancient cluster of neurons deep in the primate brain called the pulvinar. This region sits within a fast, largely unconscious visual pathway, one that processes what your eyes see before that information ever reaches the parts of your brain responsible for conscious thought, running through the retina and a structure called the superior colliculus before looping into the amygdala, the brain's alarm center. Using macaque monkeys that had never encountered a real snake in their lives, laboratory-raised with zero prior exposure, the team recorded individual neurons firing in response to different images flashed in front of them, timing the responses down to fractions of a second. The results, published in the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences, were striking. Pulvinar neurons responded faster and more strongly to images of snakes than to images of angry monkey faces, monkey hands, or simple geometric shapes. Faster than an angry face from their own species, a stimulus you'd expect to be near the top of any threat hierarchy. Faster than anything else the researchers tested. And this reaction showed up in animals that had never once needed to fear a snake in their entire lives, meaning the response wasn't learned. It was already built in, wired into the architecture of the brain before any individual monkey ever had a single relevant experience. Isbell called it the first real neuroscientific support for a theory she'd spent years defending largely through behavior and anatomy alone. Somewhere inside your own skull right now, that same ancient circuitry is sitting quietly in the background, scanning everything your eyes take in case something snake-shaped ever slides into view. Here's where the story gets even stranger, because this isn't limited to lab monkeys who have never seen a real threat. It shows up in you. Psychologists Vanessa Lobu and Judy Deloach ran a series of experiments in 2008, published in the journal Psychological Science, testing how quickly children and adults could spot a single target hidden among a grid of unrelated images. Participants were shown 9 images arranged in a grid, 1 target and 8 distractors, and asked to point to the one that didn't belong as quickly as possible. Across multiple trials, both children and adults located snakes significantly faster than they located flowers, frogs, or caterpillars, regardless of whether the images were shown in color or simple grayscale. Even young children with barely any real-world exposure to actual snakes still showed the same rapid detection advantage, suggesting the bias isn't something you slowly pick up through experience. It's closer to something you arrive already equipped with, present before a child has had time to learn much of anything about the natural world at all. Other researchers have taken this even further. Studies measuring emotional conditioning have found that people form fearful associations with images of snakes more readily than with images of guns, despite guns being a far more statistically dangerous object in the modern world you actually live in. Show someone a picture of a snake alongside a mild electric shock a few times, and the fear response sticks fast and hard. Try the same experiment with a picture of a gun and the association forms far more slowly if it forms strongly at all. Your brain isn't calibrated to the risks of today. It's still calibrated to a world your ancestors spent an almost incomprehensible stretch of time surviving inside. Now picture it. Somewhere in a sun-dappled forest, tens of millions of years before anything you'd recognize as human existed, an early primate freezes mid-motion in a tree branch. Nothing has technically happened yet. No sound, no movement it could consciously point to. But some ancient cluster of neurons, deep beneath any capacity for reasoned thought, has already flagged a pattern in the leaf litter below as worth everything else stopping for. A split second later, real movement confirms what that ancient system already suspected. The primates who reacted a half-second faster, generation after generation, over and over, are the ones whose descendants eventually became you. Reading, by comparison, is remarkably new. Writing systems only emerged around 5,000 years ago, and reading fluently is a skill every single one of us has to be explicitly taught, year after year, letter by letter, in a classroom. Your brain has no dedicated, ancient neural pathway built specifically for turning symbols into meaning the way it does for spotting a predator's shape. Every fluent reader alive is quietly borrowing and repurposing brain regions that originally evolved to do something else entirely. That's the real comparison hiding inside this whole story. One system took tens of millions of years, shaped by a predator that never stopped hunting your ancestors. The other took you roughly 6 years of elementary school, built on top of borrowed architecture that was never designed for the job in the first place. So the next time you catch your eye snagging on a coiled garden hose, a curved shadow, or a rope left lying in the grass, before your conscious mind even finishes deciding whether it's actually a threat, that's not an overreaction, and it isn't a glitch in an otherwise modern brain. That's tens of millions of years of uninterrupted survival, still running exactly on schedule, quietly doing the one job it was built to never, ever miss, long before you ever learned to recognize a single letter of the alphabet.